The elevator chimed softly as Elena Martinez juggled the towering stack of quarterly reports against her chest, her coffee-stained blazer a testament to the chaos of her morning. As a project coordinator at Blackstone Industries, she'd grown, accustomed to racing against impossible deadlines, but today felt particularly overwhelming. Her phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, no doubt another urgent message from her supervisor about the presentation due in 20 minutes. Elena quickened, her pace across the marble lobby, her heels clicking frantically against the polished floor. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting dramatic shadows across the modern space where employees moved with purpose. She was mentally rehearsing her talking points when disaster struck. Her heel caught on an uneven tile, and suddenly the world tilted sideways. The files scattered like confetti as she felt herself falling backward, her arms flailing helplessly. Instead of the hard marble floor she expected, Elena found herself enveloped by strong, steady arms. A masculine scent, something expensive and woodsy, filled her senses as she was pulled against a solid chest. For a moment, time seemed suspended. "Are you all right?" The voice was deep, concerned, and completely at odds with what she knew about Adrian Blackstone. Elena's eyes flew open to find herself staring into steel-gray eyes that held an unexpected warmth. The CEO's face was inches from hers, his dark hair perfectly styled despite having just caught a falling employee. Around them, the entire lobby had gone silent. Elena could feel dozens of eyes watching them, waiting for the legendary Blackstone temper to explode. Everyone knew the stories, how he'd made grown men cry in board meetings, how he'd fired people for far less than creating a scene in his lobby. But Adrian Blackstone wasn't angry. His hands remained steady at her waist, and his expression was soft, almost protective. Elena felt her cheeks burn as she realized she was still pressed against him, her hands somehow having found their way to his chest. Yes, I'm fine," she managed to whisper, though her voice betrayed her. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Blackstone. I didn't see." "Don't apologize," he said quietly, helping her stand properly while keeping one hand at the small of her back. "These things happen." Elena watched in amazement as the feared CEO knelt down to gather her scattered papers. His expensive suit stretched across his broad shoulders as he methodically collected each document, treating them with the same care he'd shown her. "Your presentation materials?" he asked, rising gracefully and handing her the neat stack. "How did you—" "Elena Martinez, right? Project coordinator for the Morrison account." At her surprised nod, he almost smiled. "I make it my business to know my employees, especially the ones who consistently exceed expectations." The lobby remained frozen around them, but Elena felt as if they were in their own bubble. She'd never been this close to Adrian Blackstone. Before had only seen him from across conference rooms or in the elevator. Up close she noticed things. The way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the fact that he was even more handsome than the business magazine suggested. "Thank you," she said softly, accepting the papers. Their fingers brushed, sending an unexpected jolt through her system. "Be careful," he murmured, and Elena couldn't tell if he meant with the papers or something else entirely. As Adrian walked away toward the executive elevator, Elena stood rooted to the spot, acutely aware of the whispers erupting around her. She touched her waist where his hands had been, still feeling their warmth through her blazer. The rest of the day passed in a blur of curious glances and hushed conversations. Elena tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept returning to those steel-gray eyes and the gentle way he'd said her name. She had no idea that upstairs in his corner office, Adrian Blackstone was having the same problem, concentrating, replaying, the moment when Elena Martinez had literally fallen into his world. The week following their encounter passed in a haze of stolen glances and heightened awareness. Elena found herself looking up every time the elevator chimed, her heart racing at the possibility of seeing Adrian again. She told herself it was ridiculous. He was the CEO, completely out of her league, and probably didn't give their meeting a second thought. She was wrong. Adrian had taken to walking through the office floors more frequently, something his assistant Victoria noticed with raised eyebrows. "Since when do you personally check on departmental progress?" she'd asked after his third random visit to the marketing floor that week. "I believe in hands-on management," Adrian had replied coolly, though his eyes had searched for a familiar brunette among the cubicles. On Thursday evening, Elena was alone in the office, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over her workspace. She'd volunteered to stay late to finish the Morrison project revisions, partly because she needed the overtime and partly because it kept her mind off steel-gray eyes and strong arms. "Working late again, Miss Martinez?" Elena's head snapped up, to find Adrian standing beside her cubicle, his tie loosened and jacket slung over his shoulder. Even disheveled, he looked impossibly elegant. "Mr. Blackstone," she breathed, her pulse quickening. "I didn't hear you approach. I've been told I move quietly." His lips quirked into what might have been a smile. "What has you here past 9 o'clock?" Elena gestured to her computer screen, acutely aware that they were alone on the floor. "The Morrison projections. I wanted to run additional scenarios based on the client feedback." Adrian moved closer, studying her work over her shoulder. His proximity made her skin tingle, and she caught that same woodsy scent from their first encounter. "May I?" At her nod, he pulled up a chair beside her, an action that would have scandalized the office gossips. For the next hour they worked, together, their professional discussion occasionally interrupted by accidental touches when they reached for the same document or leaned over the keyboard. "You're brilliant at this," Adrian said quietly as Elena explained her market analysis. "Your insights into consumer behavior are exactly what this company needs." Elena felt her cheeks warm at the praise. "Thank you. I know I'm just a coordinator, but you're much more than that." His voice was serious, and when she looked up, their faces were inches apart. "Don't underestimate your worth, Elena." The way he said her name, soft and reverent, made her breath catch. For a moment, the air between them crackled with possibility. Then Adrian cleared his throat and stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. "It's getting late," he said. "Can I give you a ride home?" Elena's practical side warred with something deeper. "I couldn't impose." "It's not an imposition." His tone brooked no argument. "It's late, and I'd feel better knowing you got home, safely." The ride in his sleek black car was quiet but charged with unspoken tension. Elena was hyper-aware of every detail, the way his hands gripped the steering wheel, the classical music playing softly, the expensive leather seats. When they reached her modest apartment building, Adrian walked her to the door despite her protests. "Thank you," she said, fishing for her keys. "For the ride and for helping with the project." "Elena." His voice stopped her as she reached for the door handle. When she turned, he was standing closer than propriety dictated. "What happened in the lobby? I can't stop thinking about it." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Blackstone." "Adrian," he corrected softly. "When we're alone, call me Adrian." Before she could respond, he'd stepped back, the moment broken. "Good night, Elena. Sleep well." As she watched his car disappear into the night, Elena leaned against her door, her legs suddenly unsteady. The cold, ruthless CEO the office feared was nothing like the man who'd just driven her home, who'd worked beside her with patience and genuine interest. Inside her apartment, she replayed every moment of their evening together. The way he'd listened to her ideas, valued her input, looked at her like she was something precious rather than just another employee. She was in dangerous territory, falling for a man who was not only her boss but completely unattainable. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse, Adrian stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of scotch forgotten in his hand. Elena. Martinez was proving to be a complication he hadn't anticipated. Her intelligence, her passion for her work, the way she'd felt in his arms. It was awakening feelings he'd buried long ago under ambition and responsibility. He'd built his empire by maintaining control, keeping emotions at bay. But Elena was threatening that carefully constructed wall with her warm brown eyes and infectious enthusiasm. As the city lights twinkled below, both Elena and Adrian lay awake, thinking of each other and wondering what tomorrow would bring. The crisis hit on a Friday afternoon like a thunderbolt. Morrison Industries, Blackstone's biggest client, was threatening to pull their contract due to a competitor's aggressive bid. The entire weekend became a war room situation, with teams scrambling to create a counter-proposal that would save the multi-million-dollar deal. Elena found herself at the center of it all when Adrian specifically requested her presence in the emergency strategy meeting. "We need someone who understands the Morrison account inside and out," he'd announced to the room full of senior executives. Elena Martinez has been working on their projections. For 36 hours straight, Elena worked alongside Adrian and his top team, surviving on coffee and takeout. As exhaustion set in and tempers frayed, Elena watched Adrian transform into the leader she'd only heard about in whispers. He was commanding, decisive, and utterly focused. But he never once raised his voice or blamed anyone for the crisis. By Sunday evening, most of the team had gone home to crash, leaving Elena and Adrian alone in his executive conference room. The space was littered with empty coffee cups and crumpled papers, evidence of their marathon session. "We did it," Elena said softly, looking at the final presentation on her laptop screen. "This proposal is going to knock their socks off." Adrian, who had loosened his tie hours ago and rolled up his sleeves, looked exhausted but triumphant. "We couldn't have done it without you. Your consumer behavior analysis was the key to everything." Elena felt a surge of pride at his words. "I love this kind of work. The strategy, the problem-solving." "Then why are you wasting away in a coordinator position?" Adrian asked, moving to stand beside her chair. "You should be heading up your own team." "Because positions like that don't usually go to people like..."
"Me," Elena admitted, suddenly vulnerable in the quiet room.
"People like you?" His voice was dangerously soft. People without connections, without fancy degrees from Ivy League schools. She gestured to the opulent conference room. "People who grew up in apartments like mine instead of mansions." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "You know what I see when I look at you, Elena?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "I see someone brilliant, dedicated, and completely unaware of her own worth." He moved closer, his hand coming up to gently touch her cheek. "I see someone who's been underestimated her entire life, probably by people who couldn't see past their own prejudices." The gentleness in his touch, the sincerity in his voice, it broke something open inside Elena. "Adrian," she whispered, and suddenly they were kissing. It started soft, tentative, but quickly deepened as weeks of suppressed attraction exploded between them. Elena's hands fisted in Adrian's shirt as he pulled her against him, his mouth moving over hers with desperate hunger. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Elena's lips felt swollen, her entire body alive with sensation. "We shouldn't," she whispered, even as her hands remained on his chest. "I know," Adrian replied, his forehead resting against hers. "But I can't seem to stop wanting you." "This is complicated," Elena said, voicing what they both knew. "You're my boss and I..." "Don't think about that right now," Adrian murmured, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "Right now there's just us." He kissed her again, softer this time, and Elena felt herself melting into him. All her practical concerns seemed to evaporate under his touch. When they separated, Adrian's eyes were dark with desire. "I should take you home." "Yes," Elena agreed, but neither of them moved. "Elena," Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion, "I need you to know, this isn't casual for me. What I feel for you, it's..." "I know," she whispered, understanding exactly what he couldn't put into words. Because she felt it too. This connection that went beyond physical attraction, beyond the professional respect they'd built. As they gathered their things, Elena caught sight of their reflection in the conference room windows. They looked like what they were. Two people who had found something unexpected and profound in each other. The drive to her apartment was charged with anticipation, both of them knowing they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. When Adrian walked her to her door this time, The air between them hummed with possibility. "Good night, Elena," he said softly, but his eyes promised this was just the beginning. As she watched him drive away, Elena pressed her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. Everything had changed between them, and there was no going back now. The following week was torture. Elena tried to focus on work, but every time she saw Adrian in meetings or passed him in the hallway, her body remembered his touch. The professional distance they maintained during office hours only heightened the tension between them. Their breakthrough came the following Friday evening. Elena was, once again, working late when Adrian appeared at her cubicle. "Come with me," he said simply, his voice leaving no room for argument. Elena followed him to the executive elevator, her pulse racing as they ascended to the top floor in silence. Adrian's penthouse office was a study in modern elegance, floor to ceiling. Windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, while expensive artwork adorned the walls. "Adrian, what are we doing?" Elena asked, suddenly nervous in the opulent space. Instead of answering, he moved to the bar in the corner and poured 2 glasses of wine. "We need to talk," he said, handing her a glass. "About what happened between us." Elena accepted the wine, her fingers trembling slightly. "It was a mistake," she said automatically, the words her rational mind had been repeating all week. "Was it?" Adrian moved closer, backing her against his desk, "Because I haven't been able to think about anything else." His proximity made her dizzy. "Adrian, we work together. This could ruin everything. Or it could be the best thing that's ever happened to us," he interrupted, setting their wine glasses aside. His hands came up to frame her face. "Elena, I've never felt this way about anyone." The confession broke down her defenses. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he admitted, his thumb stroking across her cheek, "but I'm more scared of walking away from this from you." When he kissed her this time, Elena didn't hold back. She poured all her pent-up longing into the kiss, her hands tangling in his hair as he lifted her onto the edge of his desk. "Are you sure?" Adrian asked against her lips, giving her one last chance to retreat. "Yes," Elena breathed, and that single word unleashed something wild between them. His mouth trailed down her neck as his hands worked at the buttons of her blouse, each touch setting her skin ablaze. Elena had never experienced anything like this, the way he worshipped her body with reverent touches and whispered endearments. "You're so beautiful," Adrian murmured against her collarbone. And Elena felt beautiful under his gaze, powerful and desired in a way she'd never imagined. They came together with passionate intensity, months of suppressed attraction finally finding release. Adrian was gentle but commanding, taking his time to learn what made her gasp and arch beneath him. When Elena cried out his name at the peak of their joining, Adrian captured the sound with his mouth as if he could hold on to this perfect moment forever. Afterward, they lay entwined on the leather sofa in his office, Elena's head on Adrian's chest as he stroked her hair. The city lights twinkled beyond the windows, but neither paid attention to the view. "No regrets?" Adrian asked softly, and Elena could hear the vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. "None," she assured him, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Though I suppose we should talk about what this means." Adrian's arms tightened around her. "It means I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "It means I want you in my life, not just my bed." Elena's heart soared at his words, but reality intruded. "People are going to talk. They'll say I slept my way to the top." "Let them talk," Adrian said fiercely. "Anyone who knows your work ethic and intelligence will see the truth, and anyone who doesn't matter anyway." Over the following weeks, they tried to keep their relationship secret, but the chemistry between them was difficult to hide. Elena noticed the whispers, the speculative glances from her co-workers. Some were kind, but others were cruel, suggesting she was using her body to advance her career. The criticism stung, but Adrian's unwavering support helped her weather the storm. He made sure she received credit for her contributions, publicly praising her work and ensuring she was included in high-level meetings. "You're protecting me," Elena observed one evening as they shared dinner in his penthouse apartment. "I'm supporting my girlfriend," Adrian corrected, taking her hand across the table. There's a difference. The possessive way he said, "my girlfriend," sent warmth spreading through Elena's chest. Despite the complications, despite the gossip, she'd never been happier. Their secret didn't last long, but by then, Elena realized she didn't care who knew. She was proud to be with Adrian Blackstone, not because of his wealth or status, but because of the man he was when they were alone together. Thoughtful, passionate, and completely devoted to her. The crisis came 6 weeks later in the form of Miranda Hartwell, Adrian's ex-fiancée and daughter of a major business partner. Elena arrived at work Monday morning to find the elegant blonde sitting in Adrian's office, her laughter carrying through the glass walls. The sight hit Elena like a physical blow. Miranda was everything she wasn't: polished, wealthy, and perfectly suited to Adrian's world. When their eyes met through the glass, Miranda's smile turned predatory. Elena's worst fears were confirmed when she overheard Miranda talking to Adrian's assistant. "It's such a shame about this little infatuation of his," Miranda was saying, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But Adrian will come to his senses. He always does." The words followed Elena home, echoing in her mind as doubt crept in. Maybe Miranda was right. Maybe this was just a temporary fascination for Adrian, a walk on the wild side before he returned to his proper social circle. When Adrian called that evening, Elena let it go to voicemail. She did the same with his texts, his increasingly worried messages. By Wednesday, she was actively avoiding him at work, taking different routes through the building and eating lunch at her desk. Finally, Adrian cornered her in the parking garage after work. "Enough," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "What the hell is going on, Elena? You've been avoiding me for 3 days." "Maybe I've come to my senses," Elena replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Maybe I realized this was a mistake." Adrian's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. "What did someone say to you?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." His voice echoed off the concrete walls. "Whatever Miranda told you, whatever poison she whispered in your ear, it's lies." Elena's composure cracked. "Is it? Because she seems to think you'll get tired of slumming it with the help and come back to where you belong." Adrian's face went white with fury. "She said that to you?" "She didn't need to say it directly," Elena whispered. "I can see it in everyone's faces. I don't belong in your world, Adrian." "My world?" Adrian laughed bitterly. "Elena, you are my world. Everything else is just background noise." Before Elena could respond, Adrian was striding away, leaving her alone in the parking garage with tears streaming down her face. The next morning, Elena arrived at work to find the entire office buzzing with excitement. Someone directed her to the main conference room, where a crowd had gathered around the wall-mounted TV. On screen was Adrian, standing at a podium in what looked like the company's main lobby. He was impeccably dressed as always, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the determined set of his jaw. "I'm sure many of you have heard rumors about my personal life," Adrian was saying to the assembled reporters and employees. "I'm here to set the record straight." Elena's heart stopped as Adrian's eyes seemed to find hers through the camera. "I am deeply in love with Elena Martinez, one of the most talented and dedicated employees this company has ever seen. She has revolutionized our approach to client relations and deserves recognition for her brilliant work that has nothing to do with our personal relationship." Gasps echoed through the conference room as Adrian continued. "Elena is also the kindest, strongest, most genuine person I've ever known. I am honored that she chose to be with me, and I will not tolerate anyone suggesting she's achieved her success through anything other than her own merit." The camera pulled back to show Miranda Hartwell standing in the crowd, her face a mask of shock and fury. "Furthermore," Adrian said, his voice carrying clearly, "I want everyone to know that I intend to marry Elena Martinez if she'll have me." Elena's hands flew to her mouth as the conference room erupted around her. Through her tears, she saw Adrian looking directly at the camera. "Elena, if you're watching this, I love you. Come home to me." Elena was already running before he finished speaking. She pushed through the crowded lobby, past the reporters and cameras, until she found Adrian standing alone by the elevator. "You magnificent, impossible man," she said, launching herself into his arms. Adrian caught her, spinning her around as applause erupted from their watching colleagues. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Is that a yes?" he asked softly. "Yes to everything," Elena whispered against his lips. "Yes to loving you, yes to marrying you, yes to building a life together." As Adrian kissed her in front of half the company, Elena realized that sometimes the best things in life really did come from unexpected falls. What had started as an embarrassing stumble had led her to the love of her life. 6 months later, Elena Martinez became Elena Blackstone in a ceremony that was featured on the society pages. But the couple's favorite photos weren't the formal poses. They were the candid shots of Adrian catching Elena when she tripped slightly on her wedding dress, both of them laughing at the perfect symmetry of the moment. Some love stories begin with careful planning and calculated moves. Theirs had started with a fall, and they wouldn't change a single moment of it.